Bua. So right here on the air and in the Irid, we have completed here on the After the Shabbat podcast, the Saturday Night Live podcast, completed the reading from the Torah, the 38th degree of Old Sabbatical studies from Shabbat Korah. There's much more. There's much more to reason on right here. But as we kind of reboot here for the first day service, aka the Sunday service, just like to review right here concerning Korah. Can we reason? Come, make a reason before we ride up with the prophet's reading from Shemuel, from Samuel, and also the Haftarah, the Haftarah reading from Samuel and the Brit Chadasha, the New Covenant reading. We have Romans chapter 13, the first 7 verses. Romans chapter 13, the first 7 verses. Now, I was saying earlier in the After the Shabbat podcast, just concerning the virtuous woman, as we play the audible from Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10 to verse 31. Proverbs chapter 31, final chapter of Proverbs, from verse 10 to verse 31, concerning the virtuous, right? The virtuous woman, or concerning the Eshet Chayil. Here we'd like to pick up a little bit more with On. Remember we mentioned On? On was one of the conspirators. He's mentioned in the beginning, right? So we have On, very interesting name, On, the name On. Because Heliopolis, or the ancient Kemetic city, was also known as On, right? Heliopolis was known as On. And we also have a man here that has, for the most part, an Egyptian name, right? On. He's called the son of Pelet, right? On, the son of Pelet. So we're going to ride out with a little bit more on him right here. But firstly, mostly here for the first day, yes, I, Rastafari, rise up to chant.
Glory to the Most High Jah, Rastafari.
This is Psalm 24 without apology. Muta Maruka and Luciana, just me.
Yes, it's the Lord, and the fullness thereof.
The earth is the Lord, and the fullness thereof.
World and they that
the world and they that dwell therein. For he had founded it upon the sea,
He has already done the sea,
and established it upon the flood.
Established it on the flood.
Who shall ascend in the hill of Jah? Or who shall stand in his holy place?
Who shall stand in the holy place?
He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul into vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He hath received the blessing from Jah and righteousness from the Almighty of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him.
This is the generation that seek him, the Most High God.
That seek thy face, O Jacob.
Seek thy face, O Jacob. Oh, yeah.
Lift up your heads, O ye gates,
Lift up
and be lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in.
And the King of glory shall come in.
Who is this King of glory?
I say, who?
Emperor Haile I, Selassie I. Jah, strong and mighty. Jah, mighty in battle.
Mighty in battle, mighty in war.
Lift up your heads, O ye gates. Even lift them up.
Lift up your
ye everlasting doors.
Be ye lifted up.
And the King of glory shall come in.
And the King of glory, yes, the King of glory shall come in.
Who is this King of glory? Emperor Haile I, Selassie I. He is the King of glory.
Who is the King of glory?
Jah, Rastafari. coming.
The King of Glory.
And now we ask
The
again,
King of Glory.
who is the King of Glory?
Come here.
Jah Rastafari, Emperor Haile Selassie. He is the King of Glory.
He is the King of Glory.
Who is the King of Glory? Emperor Haile Selassie. Emperor of Ethiopia. King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering lion in the tribe of Judah. He makes nothing sense, light of the world. Jah Rastafari, he is the King of Glory.
Yes, we have Zion.
Psalm 24. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Selah. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Selah, 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 Selah.
So me not know if the money them a run down. Why them really look about down judgment and them not look to the east. Tell me if the money them a run down. Why them really look about down judgment and I know them not see from me and not say judgment. And them not know where judgment appear from. Boy must take Rastafari here and but I'm like Job and I'm like here and man and a father Albert man a father Abraham. Words in my mouth and the body in my right and come to separate the good from Satan. Yes, me have the body United Nation. One all the rest and the one named Clinton. Yes, them go out to the Pope and Satan, but I Ethiopia man have to send the vacation. And God give it till of the cultivation. Not a contamination, not the money them a run down. Why them really go out down judgment and them not look to the east? Tell me for the money them a run down. Why them really go out down judgment and I know them not see the government them a not hope. Drop in me turban and me drop in me robe. Some tell them I'm a friend but them a too wet. This road never see me with me burden. Must let me the load. I'm for the Selassie, have me on the road. You not read Zion, you don't know the road code. Them no want me drive Benz and all let us afford. Me suffer them now like a toad. And the money them a run down. Why them really go about down judgment and them not look to the east? Tell me for the money them a run down. Why them really go about down judgment and I know them not see them on my side.
So it's not written in stone, no. There is humility. When will you find honesty? Choose the good within, don't lose your soul, no.
מזמור כ"ד לדוד מזמור לאדוני הארץ ומלואה תבל ויושבבה כי הוא על ימין יסדה ועל נהרות יכונניה. מי יעלה בהר אדוני, ומי יקום במקום קודשו? נקי כפיים ובר לבב, אשר לא נשא לשווא נפשי, ולא נשבע למרמה. יישא ברכה מאת אדוני, וצדקה מאלוהי ישעו. זה דור דורשיו, מבקשי פניך יעקב, סלע. שאו שערים ראשיכם, והינשאו פתחי עולם, ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מי זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני עזוז וגיבור, אדוני גיבור מלחמה. שאו שערים ראשיכם, ושאו פתחי עולם, ויבוא מלך הכבוד. מי הוא זה מלך הכבוד? אדוני צבאות הוא מלך הכבוד. סלע, 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 סלע.
Psalm 24, first day, Sunday evening, Psalm 24. Niki Kapayim Ubar Lebab. Clean hands, a pure heart. Here, Queen Makeda. Yes, sir.
You belong the earth and all fullness. He made the world and all inhabitants. Who can ascend to his holy mountain? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. You have clean hands and a pure heart. You have clean hands and a pure heart. Yahweh Ha'aretz U'milo'ah Tefen Yoshvei Ba Ki hu al yamin yishana ve'al harot yechonenecha liya'ale behar hey Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. You have clean hands and a pure heart. Hey, you have clean hands and a pure heart. Who can ascend to his holy mountain? Who can stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Who can ascend to his holy mountain? Who can stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. Niki Kapayim Uvar Lebab. You have clean hands and a pure heart. You have clean hands and a pure heart. holy mountain? Who can stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Who can ascend to his holy mountain? Who can stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart.
Nikki Kapayim, clean hands, innocent hands, Nikki Kapayim, Ubar Leba, Ubar, and purified Leba, purified heart. Was Korah one who had clean hands and a pure heart? Not according to the Torah, not according to the narrative. How about Datan and Abiram? Could they ascend? Could they come up? They could not come up and respond to the court. When Moshe called them up, they said they would not go up. So they too did not have clean hands and a pure heart. Now, On, as we were mentioning, On, who's one of the ones mentioning the ringleaders in the beginning of Numbers chapter 16. I think the first, second verse is mentioned On as well. He does not appear in the judgment. And those who are judged, like Korah, his company, his Edah, his congregation. Korah started his own congregation amongst the congregation of Yisrael for 250 men, Datan and Abiram. But perhaps On to Eshet, Osed, his woman, his wife, no doubt she had clean hands and a pure heart, and this caused On to kind of purify his hands and his heart and to step away from the conspirators like Korah, Datan, Abiram, and the 250. What about the sons of Korah? The sons of Korah, although maybe initially they had a part to play in the revolt, in this rebellion, but ultimately they too, right, came out from amongst them, was not implicated. So we have the father being a sinner, an akka, right? And the sons maybe initially following the ways of their father, but hearing Moshe and seeing what was going on, they separated themselves. And as the Torah says furthermore, that the sons of Korah died. Datan, it appears Datan, Abiram, their wives, their children, all that pertained to them went down too, but not the sons of Korah. So here, the evening psalm here for the first day, Psalm 24, as was said and chanted in the Heikal, in the temple in Jerusalem, Psalm 24, the evening psalm here for the first day, a.k.a. called among the Gentiles Sunday, the Yom HaRishon, the Rosh, the head day, the first day. So here, let's look over this 30 sabbatical study for Sabbath, Korah, Sabbath, bald head, Sabbath, cold as ice, Sabbath, cold as ice, Sabbath, bald head. This is all looking into, well, what does the word sound, Korah? What does Korah mean here, Chabarim? But firstly, a review right here for the first day service. We've completed the Aliyot, the 7 Aliyot from Numbers chapter 16, first verse, to Numbers chapter 18:32, the 7 Aliyot there for the Shabbat day. Now we have the Haftarah, the prophet's reading. 1 Samuel chapter 11, focus verses 14 to 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 22. In the Brit Chadasha, in the Hadith Kidan, the Hadith Kidan, reading, New Testament reading, the Epistle to the Romans, chapter 13, focus verses 1 to 7. Quick review right here. In the Torah reading, Numbers chapter 16, we had the revolt, the rebel lion, the revolt of Korah, Datan, and Abiram, and some very crucial points of reference concerning the Aishans, the incense, right? Recall to mind, Chabarim, Exodus chapter 30. Exodus chapter 30 is the great worship chapter, the chapter concerning the anointing oil, also concerning the Aishans, and also the Kana Basam, the cane, the reed, Basam, the sweet cane, the cannabis, the Kana Basam, as both one of the ingredients in the Mashiach, in the Mashacha, in the anointing oil, as well as one of the key ingredients in the aishans, in the incense, the ketoret. We find it to be curious that here in the scene from Shabbat Korah, concerning when the people said to Moses and Aharon that y'all have killed the people of Jehovah. It's interesting how they put the blame on Moshe and Aharon. Why is that? Some reason it's because Moshe is the one who said, well, you want to be priest, you want to play priest, well, go get your censers, go get your fire pans, go get your chalices, and come to the gate of the tabernacle tomorrow. So 250 of them assembled and 250 of them got burnt. They got their burnt notice. Similar to how Nadab and Abihu, the two sons of Aharon, also were burnt for offering strange fire. So here, just looking over this right here, we have the budding of Aaron's rod, the rod of Aharon, of Aaron's rod, to decide, well, who is it? Who is the man? Notice that the scriptures talking about who is the man to approach, who is the worthy man, but there was 250 men then. But then Moshe, clearly, if one listened to what he said, we'll find out tomorrow who is the man, right, that's worthy to come forward and to offer the aishans, the incense. So is it really true what Korah said, that all of them were holy? Was he saying that all of them were holy, were eyeless, so that all of them could play priest and offer aishans? How did that work out? So the budding rod of Aaron's rod, music is the rod, and I is Moses, yes, leading Jah people to the promised land. Numbers chapter 18, we have the responsibility of the Kohanim and the responsibility of Ha-Lewim. So remember the principle. All of the priests, according to the Torah pattern, all of the priests were Levites, but not all of the Levites were priests. That's a point. Don't really know if Korah quite got that, right? But anyway, we can get into Korah and what was Korah's situation. Why do we call him the crazy baldhead revolution or rebellion, the aborted coup in the wilderness? In Numbers chapter 18, we get also the Kohanim, the priest's portion, that portion that would be for the priest repeatedly in the text for their service, for how they serve. At the beginning of Numbers, we get two particular hosts or armies, or we can say co-laborers. We get the co-laborers in the military, those who are able to go forth to war, and that's from the rank and file Israelites of the 12 tribes, right, who can trace their pedigree to the Bnei Yaakov, to the sons of Jacob, and therefore had both the duty and the responsibility, right, to go forth to war and to drive out the previous occupants of Jah, Earth's rightful rulers' real estate, talking about the Canaan. Now, in the Haftarah reading, the prophets reading, we have first Shemuel, 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. And this speaks of Shaul, Old Testament Saul, Shaul. Saul's defeat, first king of Israel, Shaul. Also, the first anointed king of Israel. So who was the first anointed king of Israel? It was Shaul, Saul, of the tribe of Benjamin. He here in the Haftarah, the prophet's reading in 1 Samuel chapter 11, he defeats the Ammonites. We notice an interesting note right here. See if we can bring up this particular note here in the Chumash as we're about to ride up, with the prophet's reading, the Haftarah and the Brit Hadasha. But here, for the Haftarah of Korah, prophet's reading from Korah, we have Samuel chapter 11 at verse 14, Vayomer Shemuel il Ha'am. Then said Samuel, Shemuel, Vayomer. And he said, Shemuel, Samuel, and Samuel said, Il-ha'am, to ha'am, to the people. Liku, make I go. Make I go. Liku, tried, y'all. Make I go. With Nelka, ha Gilgal. Make I go. Make I go to Gilgal. Make I go to Gilgal. Liku, with Nelka. Go, y'all. With Nelka. Make I go. Ha Gilgal. Make I go to Gilgal. Now, on Yisrael's entering of the Holy Land, Gilgal, it became the home of the tabernacle and of Ha-Aron, of the ark, of the Tabot. And thus, and like this, the center of all important gatherings. So as we study to show ourselves approved, and here we come to the Haftarah Korah for this 38th sabbatical study, the prophet's reading, 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 14 to 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 22. The first words here at verse 14 is, Wayomer Shemuel el ha'am, Likua wenelka ha-Gilgal. Then said Shemuel, Samuel to ha'am, the people, come y'all, make I go. Come y'all, trod y'all, Liku, with Nelka, make I trod, make I go, ha Gilgal, to the Gilgal, to Gilgal. And here's the key, and ne Chadesh Sham ha Meluka, and renew, and Nechadesh, make I renew, Nechadesh, make I make Hadash, renew, to make new, renew, make I renew, Nechadesh. This is the reason when we talk about the Brit Hadasha, often referred to as the New Testament, a new covenant. More properly, according to the context of the scripture, right, the renewed covenant. As it says right here, we have Nechadesh, make I renew, not new the kingdom, but make I renew the kingdom. Nechadesh Sham, there. Where? Sham, there. Sham. As we break down the build on the word for heaven, in Hebrew is Shammai and Shamayim. Shammai, a heaven, and Shamayim. Sham, there, Mayim. Mayim is waters. Shamayim. Here, Shemuel is saying, Nechadesh Sham. Make I renew Sham there. Ha Meluka. The kingdom. Renewing the kingdom. So it was necessary. Well, first let's ask the question, why was it necessary? Right, for the kingdom to be renewed? Well, it was necessary to renew Shaul, Saul's kingdom, because his ascension to the throne was formally, right, before this, it was rejected by some of Ha'am, by some of the people. We have this in 1 Samuel chapter 10 at verse 27. 1 Samuel chapter 10. Let's go there right here. 1 Samuel chapter 10. All right, chapter 10. Hold on, brothers and sisters, so we can rightly divide the word, study these things, and really see how it goes together, right? Chapter 10, verse 27. Here it says, but the children of Belial, the children of worthlessness. Belial, it's almost like saying the children of the devil, the children of Satan, the sons of, Belial, right? But the sons of Belial, right? They said, how shall this man save us? It was saying this concerning Shaul, Saul, the first king, the first anointed king of Yisrael. They said the children, the sons of Belial, the sons of, they said, how shall this man save us? And they despised him. right? So these sons of Itches, these sons of Belial, they despised Shaul, and they brought him no presents. They brought him no gifts, but he held his peace. But Saul held his peace. So here, why was the kingdom renewed? Because some of the people, right, the sons of Belial, right, the sons of worthlessness, the sons of Itches, right, they basically said, how can this man save us? They despised him and they brought him no gifts. So this is the reason why Shemuel here in the Haftarah of Korah, he says to the people, come, make I and I go up to Gilgal, Lekua, with Nelka ha-Gilgal, or near Hadei Sham, ha-Meluka, and make I and I renew ha-Meluka, the Meluka, make I and I renew the kingdom there. And it was only after, as well, his victory, Shaul's victory over Nahash. That's one name, Nahash, in the English. The English is still transliterated Nahash. Nahash, the Ammonite, or more correctly, Nahash. Nahash in the Hebrew is the word for serpent. It's a snake, a serpent, a Nahash. Nahash ha-Ammoni. Nahash, the Ammonite. So after Saul's victory over Nahash, the serpent, the Ammonite, that the whole of the people, then after the victory of Saul, they accepted Saul as their Melech. They accepted Saul as their king after his defeat of the Ammonites. And also in 1 Samuel, the next chapter, chapter 12, verse 1, we have Shemuel, Samuel's farewell address. So in this Torah reading and feeding, we get Samuel. So Samuel, in a lot of ways, and now here's what's interesting about Samuel. Let's put this in a full context. Did you know that Samuel is a descendant of Korah? Interesting, right? How interesting is that? Samuel is a descendant of Korah. But wait, I thought you said that everybody, Korah and his whole people and Dathan and Abiram, but the scripture does say that the sons of Korah, they died not. And we do not have On as well dying with them, even though he participated. But just note that right there, that Shemuel, that Samuel is a son, we could say, of the sons of Korah. He's a son of Korah, but through the sons of Korah who died not. So the Torah portion, the commentary right here, let's speak about this and call it the two wives, the two Nashim, the two Eshet, Osets, the two wives. Thought for the Shabua right here, there's a proverb. There's a proverb that says, woe to the wicked, and woe to his neighbor. Have you ever heard the proverb, the allegory, the mashal, the saying, woe to the wicked, woe to the ratchet, and woe to his neighbor? Well, it's an ancient proverb, woe to the wicked, harasha, and woe to his neighbor. This here, it applies to Dathan, and Abiram. They were the neighbors of Korah. Dathan and Abiram were neighbors with a contentious man. Because, you see, when we study Korah, who he's said to be, according to the scripture, the biblical narrative, he was already a man of wealth. He was a prince, a Nasi. He had a name for himself. He had influence. He was one of the men that had the honor to carry the Holy Ark, of the covenant. So one would wonder, well, what was his problem? Well, he's an angry man. He was a contentious man. He just couldn't let shite go. He kept thinking about this until he found his opportunity. And when did he find his opportunity? After all this complaining and grumbling and murmuring and this rebellion, one rebellion after the next, and here comes Korah. See, this is why they were punished with him. Dathan and Abiram, as the Hebrew proverb goes, woe to the ratchet and woe to his neighbor. All right. Datan and Abiram were neighbors with a contentious, a Rasha. Rasha in the pointing. Sometimes it can be translated as wicked. Rasha. When you study the Hebrew, it comes down to the sense of one who is defiant. He was defiant. Like if you're defiant about a good thing, of course that's good. But he was, if you're defiant, about something good, like in favor of it, that's good. But his defiance here basically leads him to be that wicked that the proverb says, woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor or his neighbors, Datan and Abiram. This is why they were punished with him, and they were swept away from the known world. Numbers, Rabbah 17:5. So a brief commentary should be on contention, argumentation and contention. Contention against leadership. And contention here against Yisrael, Israel's rightful leadership, is contagious. And as there's nothing new under the sun, even these latter days and times, there's still this contention against rightful leadership. The contagion is worse than, what's that thing, the COVID? It's worse than that. Actually, contention against leadership is contagious. And contentious people, what do? They work. Yeah, contentious people work. They work hard. They work hard to convince their companions to join their cause. And as we look at the narrative here in the fourth book of Moshe, it would appear that Korah was on his way to being well successful. I mean, if we would judge it by today's standards, any Israelites, any Israelites out there, think about this for a moment. How do most one judge the mega Israelites? The ISUPKs, GMCs, and the other ones, IUIC, because of numbers. You see a lot of man. You see a lot of men, and you say, wow, and they all got their sensor, so to speak, or got the same color, the same costume or type of costume. And you're like, wow, they are really in order. Look at them, 250 of them, right? With the new wannabe pop-up leader, whack-a-mole leader, Korah, Datan, and Abiram. Give thanks for On's wife, right? And give thanks also for the sons of Korah, not following in the ratchet ways of their father. Although one would say that suppose they were wrong, suppose they withdrew away from their father, and it so happens that their father was able to be successful. But they had to make a decision. Like the Torah says, the law says, it says that he will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons, right? The children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate him. That's why it says y'all have rebelled against Moses and Aaron, and y'all have rebelled against Jehovah. In their eyes, they were only rebelling against Moses and Aaron. But why were they rebelling against Moshe with Aharon? So here, let's write up right here. A little classical rabbinical interpretation targum here that I think the Habarim will find interesting. This is concerning Numbers chapter 16 right here. Now, there's a midrash, a study of HaTorah that taught that Korah, he took issue. He took issue with Moshe in Numbers chapter 16, namely verse 1. Why? Why? Because Moses had, as we have in Numbers chapter 3 and 30, as Numbers chapter 3 and 30 reports, appointed Elizaphon, the son of Uziel, as Nasi, as prince. So we can say it as prince, princely head, princely Rosh, Ras of the Kohati, Mispacha, the clan of the Kohathites. And Korah was, as Exodus, the second book of Moshe known as Shemot, as Exodus chapter 6, verse 21 reports, Korah was the son of Uziel's older brother, Yitzhar. And thus, like this, had a claim. You could claim anything, but he had a claim here. He had a claim. He had a claim to leadership prior to Eli Safan. So the Midrash brought out a good portion of the reference in the Torah, namely that Korah's issue. Right? You know, the issue, and says anyone who has an issue, a man or a woman, they have an issue, they're unclean. Right? Of course, speaking about a physical issue, but Korah's issue, right? A psycho-spiritual issue, as bad or even worse than a physical issue, right? Because what he was stirring up here was a conspiracy and a rebellion, right? So Korah, he took issue with Moshe in Numbers chapter 16, because Moses, as Numbers chapter 330 reports, he appointed Eliad Safan, who was a son of Uzziel, as prince of the Kohathites. And Korah, as Exodus 6 and 21 reports, he was a son of Uzziel's older brother, Yitzhar. And like this, he had a claim to leadership before Eliad Safan. All right. So what he basically could say, well, actually, I'm the firstborn, right? You know, of the second son, while Eliad Safan is not even the firstborn. This was part of the point that we can discern as we study the scripts, right? So here, the punishment of Korah's congregation. This is kind of interesting when we think about it, right? First, there's a movement that starts, right? We had the commandment keepers of the living God, Ethiopian Hebrew commandment keepers. That went forward and forward and forward. Then we get the 1960s, right? Then we get Ebba Yomim or Abba Bivens, who said to have broke off from the commandment keepers congregation of Elohim Chaim, the living God. And then he went to Jersey or them parts there, and then met up with some youths that he basically reasoned with and showed them of their Israelite roots, right? So we get a ISUPK, the Israeli School of Universal Practical Knowledge of the One Westers, circa 70 AD, circa 1970 AD. Is there anything new under the sun? And then a little bit forward from there, we go from the 1970s, right? And we count nearly 30 years. And because of a false prophecy that the end of Esau's reign and rule would be, right, in 2000 with the Y2K and everything, that would be the end of Esau's so-called white man's rule. We get the ISUPK, or that one congregation, breaking down into other denominations. It's interesting here, this breaking away from the order. Resh Lakish, he interpreted the words that we have in Numbers chapter 16 and 1. Korah took, right? Yikah. Korah took. Why is this the emphasis words? Korah took. Looking at Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. If you ignore for a moment in the King James Version, the italicized places. If we ignore the italicized places that we have in Numbers chapter 16, right? Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. Let's go here. Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. And here's the verses as it reads. Now Korah, the son of Itzhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peles, sons of Reuben, took. Now you'll notice that the word men is there, but men and the colon is italicized. In the Hebrew, men is not there. So the emphasis words is that Korah, Wayikah, and he took Korah. And Korah took, who did he take? Well, he took Dathan and Abiram and On. He took the sons of Reuben. So he took these three sons of Reuben. It said 2 or 3 witnesses. So they became like his 2 or 3 witnesses for his particular rationalization, you know, that he, right, should be the head of the Kohathite tribe. And furthermore, that he also should be the high priest and so forth and so on. So Resh Lakish, he interprets the words from the Hebrew, Wayikah, Korah, and Korah took from the Hebrew of Numbers chapter 16 to teach that Korah took a bad bargain. He took a bad bargain. He took something for himself, and this was a bad deal, a bad bargain. As the three Hebrew consonants that spell Korah's name in the Hebrew, Korah, they also spell the Hebrew word for Baal, Kereach. So we have Korah and we have Kereach, the Hebrew word for Baal. And the Gemara, right, deduces that he was called Korah because he caused a bald spot to be formed among the Israelites when the earth swallowed his followers. Now, as the name Yitzchar or Izhar, right, in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1, they derive from the same Hebrew root word as the word for noon, the word in Hebrew for noon, which is actually in a double sense, a dual sense, known as Sohorayim. 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 So Yitzhar comes from the same Hebrew root word as the word for noon, right? Or the noons, right? There's noons. Actually, the noon time is doubled in the Hebrew because that's the time between the two heavenly arches, the Sohorayim. Now, the Gemara deduces that the son of Itzhar, that Korah was a son who brought upon himself anger, hot as the noon sun. So here, in reasoning from a Hebrew perspective and the Hebrew etymology, finding link in the name Korah and Kereach, the word for Baal, finding link in Yitzchar, and Sohorayi, the word for noon, and bringing out the reasonment that the son of Itzhar, Korah, was a son who brought upon himself hot anger. He went ham. He went ham. He went ham on Moshe and Aharon, hot, as the noon sun. As the name now, Kohath, right? In Numbers chapter 16 and 1, this is derived from the same Hebrew root word for set on edge, hikah, right? Set on edge. The Gemara, right, looking at the Hebrew alphanumerical value, right, the numbers, here the book of Numbers, the Gemara deduces that the son of Kohath, that Korah was a son who set his ancestors' teeth. He set his ancestors' teeth on edge. Hikah, Korah, hikah. The Gemara here deduces from the word son of Levi, son of Levi. Also found, all these words found in Numbers chapter 16, the first verse, that Korah was a son who was escorted. He was escorted to Gehenna, the Gehenna. So now we just bring out the translation as Hebrew hell, Gehenna, or we get Gehenna, Gehinnom, comes from the Hebrew gay in the Hebrew means like a valley, and Hinnom, a man named Hinnom, is where the garbage of Jerusalem and Israel was burned and became a symbol for the place of the burning of the ratchet and the place of the burning of the wicked. So we call the Gehenna, the Gehinnom, the Hebrew hell. So based on the word son of Levi, because Levi in the Hebrew means joining, Levi, that Korah was a son who was escorted, or he was joined. Others joined him in Gehenna, Gehinnom, or the Hebrew hell, a.k.a. the underworld. Here's what's interesting about the narrative. What happens now to Korah and those who were swallowed up alive, and also the Israelites wandering through the wilderness, seems to mirror where they was trying to get back to so much. They were trying to get back to Mitzrayim, to Kemet. So on one level, in the Kemetic belief system, one was seeking to repair after their death for a tried and experience through the underworld to make it to the Seket Aru, to make it to the paradisical paradise fields, to make it to a place like the Promised Land. And here the Israelites, being above ground, at least the most of them, right? Now some of them now going below ground, and the connection of the sons of Korah brings out a particular interesting context. It's like this. Many Christians believe that when they die, they're going to go to heaven, right? And that heaven is a place found in the sky after you die. But what the Bible actually teaches, even in the Our Father prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, right, as it is in heaven. So the real place of heaven to be established is on this earth, on this earthly plane. So that means that on this earth, we can either establish a heaven or we can either establish a hell. So what the Israelites established for themselves based on their Kemetic desire, since they had the desire over and over again, we see this in a couple of instances. Whenever they uck up, they was like, let's go back to kindergarten, let's go back to Egypt. But John now brings Egypt, or at least those experiences, to them here in the wilderness, right? As they go by day and by night. Now the Gemara further, it asks why Numbers chapter 16, verse 1, why it did not say concerning Korah, right? And so concerning Korah, why didn't it say son of Jacob? You know, whenever it says son of this one, son of that one, we usually see it tracing back like to the patriarchs. But here with Korah, it did not say Ben Yaakov. It did not call Korah a Ben Yaakov, a son of Jacob. Well, Rebbe Shemuel Bar Yitzhak, Rabbi Samuel Bar Isaac, he had answered this question previously, that Jacob had prayed not. Jacob had prayed not to be listed among Korah's ancestors. Really? Where do we know that? We know that from Genesis chapter 49 and 6. You recall Genesis chapter 49 and 6? This is what it means when it says rightly dividing the word of truth, studying scripture with scripture. Because some might think, oh, woo, this contradicts, that contradicts. I guess you find a lot of contradiction in the translation. You know, I guess you could imagine a lot of contradictions too, but only when you study to show yourself approved. So here in Genesis, Bereshit chapter 49, Yaakov's deathbed baraka, deathbed blessing, the prophetic of the tribes of Yisrael. Here in verse 6, here's what the patriarch said concerning Shimeon and Levi. He said, Simon, Simeon, and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Verse 6, O my soul, come not thou into their secret, to their assembly, mine honor, be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will, they dig down a wall. Once again, interesting, the connection here with Korah, right? Korah. So Jacob prayed not to be listed among Korah's ancestors in Genesis 49 and 6, where it is written, let not my soul, nafshi, don't let her come into their council, to their assembly. Don't let kabodi, my glory, kabre, not be united. Don't make it one with them. No oneness with them. Let my soul not come into their council. What does this refer to? Let not my soul, don't let my soul, my psyche, don't let her come into their council. This refers to the spies, the scouts, the tourists, the 10 of them that outnumber the 2 truthful spies, right? The 10 spies who told lies. This here of the patriarch Jacob from Genesis chapter 49, referring to the spies. And to their assembly, their church, their congregation, let my glory, kabodi, not be united. Don't let my glory become one with them. This refers to Korah's assembly. So when we're looking in the KJV, we see a lot of mention of, it says the company of Korah. But if you look at that word in the Hebrew, it uses the term Edah. The Edah is basically a congregation. So he started his kind of rebel lion, his rebellious congregation, even amongst the congregation. So to the assembly, don't make my glory be united, the patriarch said. Now, what about the name Dathan? in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1. We're just looking at this first verse, the opening verse, the key verse. This derives from the same Hebrew word as law. One of the words in the Hebrew for law is dot, dot, dot. Like what's dot? What dot? What dot? Dot is law, dot. In fact, in Bereshit, actually not Bereshit, Genesis, in Devarim, it speaks about how he gave to Yisrael a fiery law, Aish dot, Aish dot. But here, datan, right, can be derived from the same Hebrew word for law or dot, right? Da'at, we have da'at, which is knowledge, and dot, which is law. Da'at, knowledge, and dot, which is law. Now, the Gemara, right, the Hebrew, during the Hebrew alphanumerics, it deduced from Datan's name that he violated Hailahim's dot, Hailahim, Elohim's law, as well as Elohim da'at, the knowledge. He knew better. The Gemara relates that the name Abi Ram, also found in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1, this links to the Hebrew word for strengthened, Eber. We have the Eber, strengthened. And deduce from Abiram's name that he was strengthened in his refusal to do teshuvah, to have a change of mind or do a 180. Now, the Gemara relates that the name On, right, or Awan, On, contracted, lengthened, Awan, that On, in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1, to the Hebrew word for morning, Aninut, for morning, and deduces from On's name that he sat in lamentation. He sat in mourning, right? He was mourning. Now, the Gemara, it related that the name Pelet, he was called a son Ben Pelet, a son of Pelet, in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1, to the Hebrew word for miracles. What's the Hebrew word for miracles? One of the words in the Hebrew for a type of miracle, Pelaot, Pelet, Pelaot. And deduce from Pelet's name that Hashem, Elohim, performed wonders for him. And as the name Reuben, we're just touching on some of the names found in the first verse for the Shabbat Korah. We have the name Reuben, Reuben. This derives from the Hebrew words to see y'all, see you all of y'all see, Reu. To say to a group of people, Reu, is to say to a group of people to see something, Reu, see y'all, Reu. And to understand, Mavin, in the ancient Hebrew, modern Hebrew, they'll say Mavin, Ani, Mavin, I overs, Ani, I, Mavin, Ani, Mavin, I overs. Ata, Mavina. Do you overs? Do you understand? So the name Reuben, from the Hebrew, two parts, right? Reu, to see, and Mabin or Mevin, which means to understand, or to overs, as I now say, you overs, Mabin, right? The Gemara deduced from the reference to On as a Ben Reuben, a son of Reuben, in Numbers chapter 16 and 1, that On was a son who saw, Reu, he saw, seeing, sight, and he Mabin, right? Mabin, and he understood. Now, in Numbers chapter 16, verses 1 to 2, what's the report there? We get a report that the Reubenite On, son of Pelet, had joined Korah, his conspiracy. But the text does not mention On again. Isn't that interesting? That we get in Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 to 2, the mention of the Reubenite named On. Oh, did I mention that On as well is the name in the Hebrew of the Egyptian city of Heliopolis, or On, the city of the sun. Right? On, we have this in the narrative in Bereshith, in Genesis, of Joseph and Potiphar, right? The father-in-law, his father-in-law was a priest of On, right? Or Heliopolis, or Bet Shemesh, the city of the sun. Same name in the Hebrew, but here the Reubenite On, son of Pelet, he had joined Korah's conspiracy. But the Hebrew text, does not mention On again. So ones and ones in reasoning say, that's curious. It doesn't mention him with Korah, Datan, Abiram. Doesn't say an On, even though he's mentioned at the beginning of the conspiracy. He is not mentioned again. Therefore, Rab, right, explain this, right? The rabbi explained this, that On's wife, his Eshet, his Osset, his woman, saved him. On's wife, was she a Eshet Chayil? Well, I think she was. She saved him from him getting caught up with Korah, Datan, and Abiram and getting swallowed up in the underworld, in the Hebrew Duat, right? She argued to him that no matter whether Moshe or Korah prevailed, she argued, On's wife had argued with her husband that whether Moshe or whether Korah prevailed, On would remain just a disciple. She said, baby, you just a Talmud. You're not even a Levite. You're the tribe of Reuben. So whether Moshe or Korah, Moshe of the tribe of Levi and Korah of the tribe of Levi, that's a family thing here. No matter what, you're going to just remain a Talmud, a Dekah Mezmor. You're going to just remain a disciple. On then replied that he had sworn, he gave his word, he gave a pledge, right, to participate. So On's wife, On's Eshet, Osset, she was said to have gotten him drunk with wine and laid him down in their tent. Then she sat at the entrance of their tent, right, and she loosened her hair so that whoever came to summon him, once they saw her with her hair loose, they retreated. Why? Why would they retreat at a woman, a wife, sitting in her tent door with her hair loose? Well, they retreated at the sight of her seeming immodestly loosened hair. Right? So the Gemara, right, then taught that Proverbs chapter 14, verse 1, the Gemara really explains like the more like, how you have a general knowledge, special knowledge, and then you have like higher education. So the Gemara in the Hebrew Judaic discipline will be like the higher knowledge. So the Gemara taught that Proverbs 14:1, it refers to On's wife when it says, every wise woman builds her bait, builds her house, every wise woman. And this is one of the ways that ones have reason that On, though he participated at the beginning of the conspiracy, he is not recorded as one of the ringleaders being punished. So they ask, well, how was he saved? And based on scripture elsewhere, like David, how was David saved? Right, in Psalm 59 and in the Samuel text by Micah, right, his wife, who basically said to him that you better run, you better go, because if you don't, then tomorrow you'll be dead. Now the Mishnah on the Perkei Avot, or the advice of the ethics of the forefathers, it deduced that the controversy of Korah and his followers was not for, quote, the sake of heaven. Now, there are some controversies in the scripts that will be called by the Hebraicism, like some conflicts and controversies are called a controversy for the sake of Shemayim, for the sake of Shammai, for the sake of the heavens. But here, concerning the Korah and his followers, their controversy, this was not for the sake of Shammai or of Shemaim, and thus was destined, because it was not a controversy for the sake of Shemaim, for the sake of the heavens or the kingdom of the heavens. It was not to result in permanent change. Now, the Mishnah contrasted Korah's argument, right, and Korah's argument with a later argument among the Yehudi and the Israelite, and this later argument was between one leader, one sage, one scholar of Torah known as Hillel, and the other sage scholar of Torah known as Shammai. So Hillel and Shammai had an argument. Now, the Mishnah taught these were controversies for the sake of Shemaim. They were controversies for the sake of heaven. Destined. These were destined to result in something permanent. So if it's a controversy for the sake of Shemaim, for the sake of the heavens and the kingdom of the heavens, then it results in permanent change. But if it's not, if it's a vain controversy, nothing changes. Now, Rabbi Levi, he taught that Hashem told Moshe, Rab. Rab in the Hebrew means enough. It means much, enough. It can also mean, in a sense, enough. Rab. In Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 6, to repay Moshe, measure for measure, right? Measure for measure. For when Moshe told Korah, Moses told Korah in Numbers chapter 16, verse 3, enough. And then also Korah had told Moses and Aharon that y'all have taken too much. Rab. So they use the term Rab, like R-A-B, like Rab, like Rabbi. Rab also in Hebrew means enough. It can also mean too much, right? Rav Adabar Abaha had taught that a person praying alone does not say the Kedusha prayer. What is the Kedusha prayer? The Kedusha, from Kadash, to sanctify, set apart. The Kedusha prayer is the prayer of sanctification. So Rav Ada Bar Ahaba had taught that a person praying alone does not say the Kedusha prayer. That includes the words from Yeshaiah, from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. What are the words from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3? Kadosh, 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 Yahuwah Sebaot, Melo Kol Haaretz Kavodo. Holy, holy, holy is he who be of hosts of armies. Kadosh, 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 Yahuwah Sebaot. The entire world is filled with God's glory. The entire world is filled with his glory. Melo kol haaretz kavodo. Because Leviticus chapter 22, verse 32, it says, I will be hallowed, Kadash, Kadash, set apart. I will be made holy, set apart. I will be set apart among the Bnei Yisrael. I will be set apart amongst the sons of Yisrael, Yasharallah. Thus, sanctification, Kedusha, it requires a minyan. What's a minyan? It's 10 people. 10 people, 10 manam is a minyan. Now, Rebani, the brother of Rebbe Hiya Baraba, he had taught that we derive this. How do we come to this minyan, or 10 people for congregational worship? This is derived by drawing an analogy between the two occurrences of the word talk. In the Hebrew, we have the word talk. Talk means among or amongst. We have it in Leviticus 22, verse 32. I will be hallowed, set apart, bid talk amongst the Bnei Yisrael, among the sons, in the midst, amongst the sons, bid talk, in the talk amongst. And also in Numbers chapter 16, verse 21. In this script, Jehovah Hashem tells Moshe and Aharon to separate yourselves from the talk, right, from the midst of this congregation, of this edah, of this assembly. This here refers to Korah and his followers and his followers. Korah wanted to be one of the first alphabet boys out there in the wilderness. Just as Numbers chapter 16, verse 21, this here refers to a congregation. A congregation implies a number of at least 10. A congregation, Hebraically, according to the study of HaTorah and the Hebrew scripts, it implies a number of at least 10. So Leviticus 22, verse 32, this also implies at least 10 men. Now the Mishnah in the Pirkei Avot, in the ethics of the forefathers, the ethics of the patriarchs, it taught that the opening of the earth's mouth that we find in Numbers chapter 16, verse 32, this was one of 10 miracles, Pelaot, miracles that Hashem, that Jehovah created at the end of the first Shabuah, the first 7 days, the first week Shabuah of creation, at the eve of the Shabbat at twilight. Now, Rebbe Akiva interpreted Numbers chapter 16, verse 33 to teach that Korah's assembly, Korah's congregation will have no portion. They will have no portion in the Olam Haba, in the world to come. As the words, quote, the earth closed. The earth, she closed up on them. This reported that they died in this world, in the Olam Hazeh, in this Hazeh Olam, and that the words, they perished from among the assembly. They perished from among the assembly. This here implies that they died, that their death in this world, they died to the Olam Haba, to the next world as well. But Rebbe Eliezer disagreed with Rabbi Akiva because he reading 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 6 to speak of Korah's assembly when it said, quote, the Lord Yahweh Jehovah kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and brings up. So here among the ancient scholars of Torah, Rabbi Akiva, he says that, well, Korah and his assembly, you know, when the words say that the earth closed upon them, that they died in this world and they died to the next. But then Rabbi Eliezer disagreed, pointing to 1 Samuel 2 and 6 to speak of Korah's assembly, that Yahweh, that Jehovah kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and he aliyahs up and he brings up. Now, this is interesting that Rabbi Eliezer would quote 1 Samuel because Shemuel or Samuel, that quote there is speaking of Samuel's mother, Hannah. And we also know that Shemuel, Samuel, was a descendant of Korah. So now the Gemara here cites a Tana, another teaching, right, and teacher that concurred with Rabbi Eliezer's position. And this was Rabbi Yehuda ben Batira. He likens Korah's assembly to a lost article, like a lost article of clothing, a lost something that one seeks. As Psalm 119 verses 176 says, Psalm 119 verse 176, I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant. So another Tana, another teaching in the name of Rebbe, in the name of Rabbi, it deduced from the words, the sons of Korah did not die. Ubnei Korah Lo Yamutu. They did not die. In Numbers chapter 26, verse 11, that providence, Yireh, Yahweh Yireh, Jehovah Jireh, Yireh, Iri, set up a special place for them to stand. So now another teaching, right, it deduces that providence. Now, when we say providence, people might think of it as a word, but in Hebrew, we have the name Jehovah Jireh, Yahweh Yireh. Yireh in the Hebrew means to provide. Yireh in the Hebrew means pro-vida. Pro before, vida, to see before. And we bring this now to sense of Jehovah Iri. Yireh, Iri. Seeing beforehand, seeing sight, that providence had set up a special place for them to stand on high in Gehinnom, in the Hebrew hell, the Hebrew underworld. There, Sham, there, Korah's sons, they sat and they sang praises to Elohim. Rabbah Bar-Hana had told that once when he was traveling, there was an Arab showed him where the earth swallowed Korah's congregation. So we have one Rabbah Bar-Hana had told that once when he was traveling, that an Arab had showed him where the earth swallowed up Korah's congregation. Rabbah Bar-Hana, he saw two cracks in the ground from which smoke had issued. He took a piece of wood, he soaked it in water, he attached it to the point of his spear, and he passed it over the cracks. And the wood was singed, was burnt, was singed. Now the Arab had told Rabbah Bar-Hana to listen, Shema. And he heard them saying, Moshe, Torato, Emet. Moses and his Torah are true, Emet. But Korah, and his company, Chozvi, are liars. Now the Arab told Rabbah Bar-Hana that every 30 days, Gehinnom, Hebrew hell, the Hebrew underworld, caused them to return for judgment, as if they were being stirred, stirred like meat, like debtors, like meat in the pot. And every 30 days, they said those same words. So here, just a little bit of a reasonment here. There's a little more to share right here. But just going through some of the ancient rabbinical, interpretations. A lot of these rabbinical interpretations, they go along with the apocryphal books, the books between Malachi and Matthew, namely, Maccabees and many of these apocryphal reasonments right here. And they actually give a context to what a Rabbeinu, the Rabbi, Yeshua HaMoshiach brings forward in the Brit Hadasha. But here at the 40-minute mark right here, just went through a little additional reasonment right here. Let us pick up right here with the Haftarah, right? The Haftarah and the Brit Hadasha. Yes, sir.
Stay tuned for the Haftarah and the Brit Hadasha. Aliyot.
Here, the Braka, the blessing before the reading of the Haftarah. Right here.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nebiim tobim v'ratzah b'debreihem hane'amarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe abdo u'be'Israel ammo u'b'nebiei ha'emet wa'tzedek. Blessed art thou, Adonai, Eloheinu, eternal King, who has chosen good prophets and was pleased with their words that were uttered with truth. Blessed art I, Adonai, who chooses the Torah, and Moses, his servant, and Israel, his people, and the prophets of truth and righteousness.
Yisrael, Abba Yisrael, Abba Yisrael, Abba Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Shema.
Live by the Torah and the wicked are gonna crumble. Bible.
Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. What does Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad? Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. The Lord, our God, the Lord is one. What does that really mean?
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 14 to chapter 12, verse 22. Then said Samuel to the people, "Come and let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there." And all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Shaul king Negus lifnei Yahweh before Yahweh in Gilgal, and there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before Yahweh, Buruku. And there Shaul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Chapter 12. And Samuel said to all Israel, "Behold, I have hearkened to your voice in all that ye said to me, and have made a king over you. And now, behold, the king walketh before you, and I am old and gray-headed. And behold, my sons are with you, and I have walked before you from my childhood to this day. Behold, here I am, witness against me before Yahweh, and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Or whose ass have I taken? Or whom have I defrauded? Whom have I oppressed? Or of whose hand have I received any bribe to blind my eyes therewith? And I will restore it you." And they said, "Thou hast not defrauded us, nor oppressed us, neither hast thou taken aught of any man's hand." And he said to them, "Yahweh Buruku is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day, that ye have not found aught in my hand." And they answered, "He is witness." And Samuel said to the people, "It is Yahweh Buruku that advanced Moses and Haron, and that brought your fathers up out of the land of Egypt. Now therefore stand still, that I may reason with you before Yahweh of all the righteous acts of Yahweh Buruku, which he did to you and to your fathers, when Jacob was come into Egypt, and your fathers cried to Yahweh. Then Yahweh sent Moshe and Haron, which brought forth your fathers out of Egypt, and made them dwell in this place. And when they forgot Yahweh their Elohim, he sold them into the hand of Sisera, captain of the host of Hazor, and into the hand of the Philistines, and into the hand of the king of Moab, and they fought against them. And they cried to Yahweh, Buruku, and said, "We have sinned because we have forsaken Yahweh, and have served Balaam and Ashtaroth. But now deliver us out of the hand of our enemies, and we will serve thee." And Yahweh sent Yerubaal and Bedan and Jephthah and Samuel, and delivered you out of the hand of your enemies on every side, and you dwelt safe. And when you saw that Nahash, the king of the children of Ammon, came against you, you said to me, "Nay, but a king shall reign over us, when Yahweh your Elohim, who was your king." Now therefore, behold, the king whom ye have chosen, and whom you have desired, and behold, Yahweh who have set a king over you. If you will fear Yahweh and serve him, and obey his voice, and not rebel against the commandment of Yahweh, then shall both ye and also the king that reigneth over you continue following Yahweh Elohim. But if you will not obey the voice of Yahweh, but rebel against the commandment of Yahweh, then shall the hand of Yahweh be against you, as it was against your fathers. Now therefore stand and see this great thing which Yahweh will do before your eyes. Is it not wheat harvest today? I will call to Yahweh, and he shall send thunder and rain, that ye may perceive and see that your wickedness is great, which ye have done in the sight of Yahweh, in asking you a king. So Samuel called to Yahweh, and Yahweh sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared Yahweh, and Samuel. Amen.
This is all we need, all we need. This is all I have. And all I say and all I do is not only conquering lion of Judah. Judah, Moab, and Bethel, the Negede, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Revelation 5. Kadoos, conquering lion of Judah.
That after Christ is a babe, the next coming actually is the Ancient of Days.
Nigga.
We say the Ancient of Days is the King of Kings of Ethiopia.
It is the Abaher. Conquering lion of Judah.
We say the Ancient of Days is the King of Kings of Ethiopia. The Ancient of Days prophecy was revealed in and is revealed in and through the coming of the King of Kings and the coming Haile Selassie, as well as the setting up of a kingdom according to Daniel chapter 2. Then in 1930, we have the King of Kings upon the throne of David being crowned King of Kings, conquering line of the tribe of Judah, King of Israel. You understand some of the word of Yahweh is that there's never lack a man to sit upon the throne of great King David. You understand?
Being spread all over another country, another way of thinking. I also heard that your eating is also kosher eating. I mean, you're not eating pork and things like that.
Are you Jewish? Yeah, Rasta. I don't understand. Well, I am Rasta.
So it's the same tradition as for the
Lion of the tribe of Judah. That must be Jew. Judah. Must from Jew. I will class Judah.
Lion of Judah shall break every chain.
Rastafari, King of all kings, Lord of all lords, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, elect of himself, my 10th and the rebel exhibit massacre, Yahweh, the goose and the gods, let Jah be praised.
Stay tuned for the Haftarah and the Brita Hadasha Aliyot, 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 Aliyot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Asher natan lanu Moshiach Yeshua ve'habarot shel habarit ha-hadasha. Baruch atah Adonai notain habarit ha-hadasha. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gave to us the Messiah, Jesus, and the commandments of the new covenant. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the new covenant.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
The Brit Chadasha Chadis Kidan Renewed Covenant reading for RSS number 38, Korach. From the Epistle to the Romans, chapter 13, focus verses 1 through 7. We'll be reading the full. We begin B'Shem Ha'ab, W'Habein, W'Ruach HaKadosh, Yahweh Ahad. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, He who be, the One. Romans chapter 13. Verse 1, Aleph, verse 2, Beit, verse 3, Gimel. Kol nefesh tikna'o ligdulat ha-rashuyot ki ein rashut ki im et ha-Elohim וה-רשויות הנמצאות על יד אלוהים נטמנו. לכן כל המתקומם לרשות ממרה את פי האלוהים, והממרים יישאו את עונם. כי אין פחד השליטים על עושה הטוב, כי אם על עושה הרעה, ועל כן אם הרצונך שלה תרע מן הרשות עושה הטוב, והיה לך שבח מידע. Let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power but of Elohim. The powers that be are ordained of Elohim. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of Elohim, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of Elohim to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is a minister of Elohim, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are Elohim's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. The law of love toward the neighbor. Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another has fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk honestly in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, nor in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on Ha-Adon Yeshua HaMashiach, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Kaborula Kalu, Kaborula Dimtu, Kaborula Chailu, Kaborula Kedamawi, Chaile Selassie, Beyesus Christos Sim. Glory to word, glory to sound, glory to power, glory to Abinu Melkenu, our Father, our King, the first power of the Trinity, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. Yes, I, Rastafari.
Hakadosh, Baruchu, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Hear His Majesty speak, and speak of Paul's writing, and what a beautiful writing right there. Romans chapter 13, give thanks, Chabarim, give thanks, Chabar Shalano, Ras Ayson, Ras Sahar Ahad. Hear the word of the King. Faith works by love.
Truth is truth. Imperial Majesty, how does it seem to you the Apostle Paul meant the statement, faith works by love?
የቅዱስ ጳውሎስ ያለው የተሳሳተ ቃል አይደለም።
What St. Paul said here is not a mistaken statement. You all know what St. Paul was and what kind of work he was engaged in before his conversion. Later on, after his conversion, he had faith and love, and if he had not had that, he would not have taught people this in his epistles. Neither love nor faith are separable from each other. An elaboration of this is Paul's exposition in one of his epistles, which speaks of love and faith. Without love, all of our human efforts in the sight of God can be useless. He loved us, and on our behalf, he was given as a ransom, and it was because of love and his love for us that he accomplished the act of love.
Like mountains round about Jerusalem, like mountains round about Jerusalem.
The love of Yah, Rastafari, Barrington Levy. Yes, I remember Levi.
The only love that's righteous is the love of Jah. The only love that's righteous is the love of Jah. I've been traveling before the universe and see where it inspired to what I read. So let's give thanks and praise to the Most High. I learned with Babylon, trying to teach us love, but it was the love of God. So now it has been proved to idolize, brethren, that the only love that's righteous is the love of God. The only love that's righteous is the love of God. Everywhere I go, Babylon try to teach us love, but it was the
Oh, Babylon, you know you were a wicked man, and you come and down to teach us to look in the eye. But the love that you tried to teach us was a double fault. The only love that righteous the love of down. I said the only love that righteous is the love of God. The only love that righteous is the love of God. The only love that righteous is the love of God. I've been traveling this whole universe and see we repeat fire. The I and I dream a old God. That gives thanks and praise to the Most High. I learned to be Babylon, try to teach us love. But it was the love of God. Yes, it was the love of God. So now it has been true, so I and I virgin. That the only love that's righteous is the love of God. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. The only love that's righteous is the love of God. The only love that's righteous is the love of God. The only love that's righteous is the love of God. Everywhere I go, Babylon try to teach us.
Yes, the love of Jah, the love of Yah, Rastafari, and love of Kedamari Haile Selassie. They're here to teach him His Majesty, where he speaks about Paul. Paul mentions in one of his epistles, and this is perhaps one of the epistles His Majesty Kedamari Negus, the conquering line of the tribe of Judah, pointing to right here. Here we have Romans chapter 13. Now it's interesting, the number 13, because we was looking at Numbers chapter 13. Right, from the previous Torah reading and feeding, when these conspiracies really start to break out, right? We start to break out there, especially concerning the murmuring after they left from Sinai, tried it through the Paran, the wilderness, reaching all the Kadesh Barnea, more murmuring, sent forth the spies. 10 of them outnumbered the 2 truthful witnesses. They listened to the spies that told lies, more murmuring, complaining, grumbling, destruction, the sentence of a year for the day, so 40 years for 40 days. And then we have this right here, picking up here again. So here, for the Brit Chadasha reading, we had Romans chapter 13. The first verse says so much, this Torah reading and feeding. Make every soul, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power but of Elohim, true good, true God, the power. And the powers that be are ordained of Elohim. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power was Korah resisting, Datan and Abiram, the 250 men. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance. Now the ordinance also is brought out as the statutes, right? The statutes in the Torah, the ordinance of Elohim. And they that resist shall receive to themselves, receiving to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, do good, do good. The harps, the drum, heartbeat, do good, do good. And thou shalt have praise, praise of the same. For he is the minister of Elohim to thee for good. Here we can apply this to Moshe. Was Moses, Moshe, and Aharon, but namely Moses, since he was in the direct target of Korah's sight initially, was not he the minister of Elohim to the Israelites for good? How about to Korah, a Kohathite, one of those who had the privilege, right, of being in the sanctuary and also the privilege of being one of the carriers of the holy furniture, even the Holy of Holies. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. It seems as though Korah was really trying to push through this rebellion really quickly, push through it really quick, fast. A lot of these events are moving like fast and furious out here in the wilderness. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain. The sword. So what is the sword? Right? What's the sword of Elohim? Hailehem, the Elohim. Is it not the word? Is not his sword? Is not the sword of Elohim, the sword of Yahweh, of Jehovah, his word? Does not Jeremiah say so? Does not the epistle say so? Right? And like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. And where it reads in Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 12, ye Ethiopians also shall be slain by my sword. So what is the sword of Yahweh? Is it not the word of Jehovah? For he is the minister of Elohim, of Exavia, the sustainer, a revenger. A what? A revenger. Some say, leave all vengeance to the Lord. Yes. And the Lord commits to whom he wills that vengeance. And it says, a venger, a revenger to execute wrath upon them that doeth evil. This is what we witness here, this 38th sabbatical study, even from the previous 37, getting to the 36. Really starts to break out roughly around the 36th sabbatical study. Verse 5, wherefore y'all ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. It's interesting, one of the previous midrashes to the psalm, which psalm was that again, where it broke down like the 7, right? Talking about wrath and anger, you know, the 7 angels of judgment, right? For those that doeth evil. Wherefore, y'all needs be subject. What is the subject? Who is the subject? What is the object? Wherefore, y'all needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for, get this here, conscience sake. But in the Brit Chadasha says that some of them, their conscience is like seared through like a hot iron. Their conscience is burnt out. Was Korah's conscience burnt out? For For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are Elohim's ministers, as the Levites, Halloween, and as Ha-Kohanim, the Levites and the priests, being ministers of Elohim, and attending continually upon this very thing. It's like Korah was like the psalm and the word says, like a man that wanders from his place. His place as a Kohathite, right, was there to minister in the sanctuary. And also when the tabernacle was moving from spot to spot to move the holy things, including the Ark of the Covenant. It goes on to say here, render therefore to all their dues. This is why we get after the rebellion, after the conspiracy, the controversy, after the judgments, we get what's due to Ha-Kohanim, what's due to the Kohanim, what's due to the Levim. Render therefore to all their dues. Pay your dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due. For the one whom you are to give tribute, give tribute. Custom to whom custom. According to the custom, give custom. Fear, reverence, respect to whom fear. Respect, reverence. So give reverence. Honor, celebration to whom honor, celebration. So honor thy father and thy mother. Here we have part 5 here where it says that the law, ha-Torah, the law of love, of ahaba, of fikr, wadada, toward the neighbor. Note this here. One of the reasons here, the proverb here, was woe to the wicked, the rasha, the defiant, to the hard-headed, stiff-necked, the wicked, and woe to his neighbor, applying to Datan and Abiram, who were the neighbors of Korah. Datan and Abiram were neighbors with a very angry, upset, a very contentious man, a man of wealth, a man of name, a man of position, a man of influence. And this is why they were punished together with him and swept away from this world. But here in Romans chapter 13, this section here from verse 8 is the law of love toward the neighbor. Love one another as you love yourself. Well, that could be the problem there, don't you think? If we have to love one another like we love ourselves, then the first condition is answering the question, how do we love ourselves? So therefore, if one who's a neighbor may not be loving you very much, it might not really be because of you directly initially. It might be because of themselves. Here, verse 8, it says, owe no man anything. No doubt, Korah, because of his firstborn status and who he thought he was, he probably made Datan and Abiram probably feel an obligation. But owe no man anything, but to love one another. How was Korah loving his neighbors? How was he loving Moshe, his fellow Levites? How was he loving Aharon? They were cousins. They were family. How was he loving Datan and Abiram? They were cousins too, in a sense, and also family, right? How was he loving them, right? It says, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law, ha-Torah. But it's easy to assume that since Korah's his contention was to Moshe and Aharon. It's possible sometimes. You ever know somebody they're upset with one friend over here, and you think, wow, yeah, I don't like some of the things that friend did either, so I'll join you in being upset with that friend. But then when it's all said and done, they're really hating on you too. You didn't see it. You didn't know, right? You're like, what? But I was with you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Remember the principle of love. Right? Verse 9, it says, for this, thou shalt not commit adultery. What was Korah doing on another level spiritually? He was adulterating the command, adulterating the order. Thou shalt not kill. What he was doing was leading to potentially them killing Moses. This is why Yahweh responded so fast. He brought in his tech, the cloud technology, and he descended to reconcile this, to work this out quick, fast. Because if they had continued to listen, as we already know, that even after, right, the 250 men, right, after all that had happened, they still are accusing Moses and Aharon of killing, right? Can you imagine if that conspiracy had gone on, if Jah did not intervene, if Jah did not intercede? they would have killed Moshe and Aharon. Thou shalt not steal. They were stealing. Jah told Moshe, and Moshe told Aharon, told the tribes, told Israel. But now Korah, feeling slighted, was ready to steal. Thou shalt not be a false witness. Oh, big time. Here, brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers. Right here. We at the 92nd mark, right here, at the 92nd mark. So those who seek to call in, or check us out on the Rastafari Israelites, the calling number 515-602-9761. That's 515-602-9761. So here we're just reviewing 50 seconds, y'all. We're reviewing here the Berit Chadash, the New Testament, the renewed covenant reading, Romans chapter 13. Here we're at verse 9, where it reads, for this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not, rather, in the Hebrew, thou shalt not murder. Different word for kill. Thou shalt not murder, right? Having malice aforethought. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not be a false witness. And I was about to say right here that they was bearing false witness. Korah was bearing false witness big time against Jehovah, against Moses, and against Aharon, and against even those who were part of his foolishness. The fools that followed him. Thou shalt not covet. Now here's the big one. He violated this. He was coveting. He wanted, he had a strong desire, a lust to have that which he had no right, right? That which he had no right to have, right? He basically was wanty for that which he had no right to have. But here, right? Thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, any other imperative, it is briefly comprehended in this saying. So the 10 commandments, the 10 words is briefly, one can comprehend all 10 by this brief word right here, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Once again, brings us to the very epicenter. How did Korah love himself? So one could look at Korah from the outside and say, man, this man was a prince and all of that, man of wealth, a man of name. He was one of the carriers of the Ark of the Covenant, all of this, But we're just looking from the outside. How did he love himself? Verse 10, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Well, Korah worketh a big ill to Datan, Abiram, to their families, to 250 followers. Therefore, love is a fulfilling of HaTorah. And that, knowing the hour, what time is it? You know what time it is? Knowing the time, the spiritual, the iritical time, the prophetic time, knowing the time that now it is high time. It is high time. Notice the Aishans, all the Aishans all over this Torah reading and feeding. It's high time to wake up out of sleep. For now is our salvation, our Yeshua, right? Our salvation, our victory, nearer than when we amen, naamin, then when we naamin, then when we admit it, then we credit it, then we accept it as truth. Verse 12, the night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us make I and I therefore cast off the works of darkness and make I and I put on the armor of light. I like to refer to where His Majesty quoted this. His Majesty actually quoted Hawadi Apollo. I'd like to bring this in. Which particular word sound and what accompanies that word sound there, that the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah here quoting Paul. Because there's many ones that have, mixed up moods and attitudes about Paul, even whether as Israelites or even among some Rastafari, reason for brethren. And, hopefully we'll continue the reasonment on Paul. But what's of interest to I and I as Rastafari, that whatever misgivings we might have about Paul, that the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, Adonai Haile Selassie, doesn't have these same misgivings. So we have to ask ourselves, who's right and who's wrong. Well, we're carrying his name. He's not carrying our name. That should give you a hint right there. But here, verse 13, let us walk honestly, as in the day. All right, know ye not that there are 12 hours in the day, as in the day, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, wanty, not in the wantiness of Korah, Datan, Abiram, 250, not in strife, the strife they cause in the camp, not in envying, the envy they cause in the camp. Verse 14, but put y'all on Ha-Adon, Yeshua, Ha-Moshiach. Put y'all on Geta Jesus Christos, and make not provision for the flesh, for the carnal minded. Was what Korah was presenting, though he was presenting it in religious terms and terminology, wasn't it basically all just carnal and for his flesh? So he quoted Jah and said everyone's holy, rah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Right? And make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust, the desires thereof. And this must be what the sons of Korah began to recognize, because, they knew their daddy. They knew who their daddy was. But here, brothers and sisters, let's hear this here. His Majesty speaking on the 10 words, 10 commandments.
Your Imperial Majesty, as a mature Christian, have you a special word for young people of these days?
በዚህ ቀን የኛ ግዛት ውስጥ ላለው ሁሉ ነው የምንናገረው።
On this occasion, I address also all those within our empire. Our Christianity is not restricted to a given church, and I stress above all that we do not wish to make distinctions. My advice to all is to fulfill the 10 commandments. You are aware of the contents of the 10 commandments and can elaborate on it. If the nation for which I am the emperor follows and accepts this, since it's also what I accept and follow, I would believe our country is not only historically Christian, but also actively Christian. My advice to all is to fulfill the 10 commandments.
So here, I think we found it right here in selected speeches. Get a copy, the reprint, LOJS, LOJ Society. We found it right here, where Paul, let's see, is this from? Okay, we're going to have to do this over again, brothers and sisters, but it's in the domestic section. Let's bring this up again right here. I found where His Majesty in selected speeches is quoting Paul, and here it goes right here. It's in a section that is called, it's on page 453. 453 of selected speeches, 453. Give me one moment right here. I want to get the hard copy here. I'm using the digital, but so I can then see, well, when was this particular speech made? Was it 453? On page 453, selected speeches. One can get a hard copy, lojs.org, or elsewhere. Get a copy. So here, this is a speech. It's in the domestic section, and it appears to have been given, it's a rather long speech here, August 29th, 1959. August 29th, 1959. And it's in the section here that is called domestic. It's addressed to the nation on his tour. And here on page 453, he says this right here in the subsection, vibrant policy. He says, it is by the understanding of past difficulties that we can bequeath fundamental guidances, which would be of pride to the coming generations. We therefore urge our people to struggle and to make sacrifices for those things which will enable them to ameliorate their conditions of life and leave a richer heritage. We wish to recall to our people what Pt2 Rss, St. Paul said, "The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us make I and I put on the armor of light. Let us make I and I walk honestly as the day." End quote. The Ethiopian people are now conscious of their destiny and can strive to achieve their ideal. In our study of the various social systems during our extended tour, we have found that the reason for their successful progress lies in the fact that they have accumulated enough capital, which in turn made it possible for them to carry out better farming, finance, mining projects, to serve their industry, harness their rivers, and in general, exploit their natural resources. It is only through their achievements and not because of the difference in their innate ability nor in their numerical superiority that some countries have attained a high degree of progress, while those which have not fully developed and utilized their inborn abilities and thereby lagged behind in tapping their natural resources have been labeled, quote, underdeveloped, end quote. The latter have become the dumping ground of the expensive manufactured goods of the former. So here in the section on the domestic, vibrant policy, His Majesty quotes Hawari Apollos and his application even here for this Torah reading and feeding. He says, it's by understanding of past difficulties. We study this 38 sabbatical study and the 37, 36, and all the others, but especially here, we recognize the past difficulties I people coming out of difficult circumstances and situations had. So it's by understanding of past difficulties that we can bequeath, pass on fundamental guidances that would be of pride to the coming generations. Also, in speaking about the generations and even the generation gap between those who came out of Mitzrayim with Moshe, but did not enter into the promised land, and their children, the next generation, right, that was found worthy to enter into the land because they were bequeathed the fundamental guidances, right, about the rebellion, the mixed-up moods and attitudes of their forefathers, causing them to wander for 40 years in the wilderness. We therefore urge our people to struggle. Here, His Majesty is stating that urging I people to struggle, the importance of struggle, especially righteous struggle. We therefore urge our people to struggle and make sacrifices for those things which will enable them to ameliorate, like to lessen, right, and make better, in that sense, their conditions of life, and to leave, right, to leave for their seed and for their posterity, right, a better heritage, right, for we and our posterity to carve for ourselves a place in the sun.
Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, O children of Israel? Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians? Are ye not as children of the children of the Ethiop? Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord?
So right here is the time that we have here, brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers. There's a lot much more to be mined out right here concerning, especially the 36 to the 38. Because where things really turned bad for the Bnei Yisrael. And it actually reminds me of everything from like the 60s, the late 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. That kind of brings us here, even in the wilderness of the Americas and the Caribbean, here to, the 21st century. But even in the 21st century, faith, courage, and a just cause, David, even I, King of Kings, and I, the Davids will still overcome and beat Goliath and the Galut. Galut in the Hebrew is the exile. That's our big Goliath. That's the big Goliath. All right. So here, we touch on synopsis in the Shavua previous, and right here, some of the Parashah, the Torah reading and feeding the questions here. Have like 28 of them. I like to go through them at a lively pace because I think it's important for us to begin to really comprehend, not just the casual read through. You'll pick up certain things, but really to study, to shew ourselves approved. So here for this Shabbat Korah, this Senbet Koreh, the Sabbath Korah, question 1. Levi had 3 sons. Do you know what the names of the 3 sons, the Shemot of the 3 sons of Levi? What were the 3 sons of Levi? What were their names? You have Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. From whom came the 3 clans, the Mispachot. Mispachot to Mispakas, Mispachot, the 3 clans of the Gershoni, Merari, the Merarites, and the Kohathites. Question 2 for Shabbat Korah, Senbet Koreh. From which of Levi's 3 sons, Lewi's 3 sons, would come Yisrael, Israel's priesthood, Israel's kahuna? Well, from Kohath. Since your name Kohath, also in the Hebrew, can mean like to assemble, Wayat Kahel, Kohath, like the idea of assembly. His middle son. So from the middle son, not the oldest, not the youngest, but from the middle son would come Yisrael's priesthood. Speaking about Aaron, right? Aaron and his sons. Levi's son Kohath, he had in turn 4 sons. What were their Shemot? What was their Simoch? What were their names? Well, here we have Amram, we have Itzhar, we have Hebron, and we have Uziel. 4 sons of Kohath, Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Question 4. To which Mispacha, to which clan did Moses and Aharon and Aaron belong? Moses and Aharon, they were Kohathites, Kohati, from Amram, right? Ben Amram, Ben Kohath, their descendancy. Question 5, to which Mispacha, right, did Korah belong? To which Mispacha? Korah was a firstborn Kohathite from Yitzhar, Ben Kohath. Question 6, what was the relationship between Korah and Aharon? What was the relationship? Well, according to the narrative and the genealogies, they were cousins. Their fathers were brethren, were brothers. Question 7, are Halloween, the Levites, the Lewim, are the Levites HaKohanim? Are they priests of Israel? Are the Levites the priests of Israel? No, only those Kohathites, only those who are Kohathites who descend from Aaron, were qualified to be Kohanim priests. Elohim, he had gave the other Levites as a gift, as we have in the narrative, as a gift. So the other Levites, the Lewim, they were given as a gift to Aharon, Ubaniah, and to his sons, Aaron and Banim, and his sons, for helping and assisting to maintain the Mishkan the tabernacle, the sanctuary, and to help and assist in the offering of zibahot, of the sacrifices, on behalf of Ha'am, on behalf of the people, speaking about the other Israelites. So, therefore, while all of the priests, the Kohanim, are Levim, not all of the Levim, the Levites, are Kohanim. Question 8. Why was Korah, why was he angry? Why did he go so ham? Why did he go ham on Moses? Ham, hot. Why did he go ham, hot on Moshe? Why was he so angry with Moses? Question 8. Because Moses did not appoint him as the Rosh, as the Ras, as the head of the Mispaka, of the clan of the Kohati, of the Kohathites, even though he was next in line. Question 9. Who were the three other leaders? The three other leaders of the rebellion, the rebel lion, the rebellion, beside Korah? Who were the three other leaders, the co-conspirators? Well, according to Torah here, we have Datan, Abiram, and On. They were from the tribe of Reuben. That was Yaakov, Jacob's firstborn son. Right? It's like the battle of the firstborns, right? Jacob's firstborn sons, who was disgraced. He was disgraced, Reuben. He, no doubt, would have been that priest, being the firstborn, but he was disgraced because of his uckery, and he was replaced by Lewi, by Levi. Question 10, how many men took part in the rebellion, in the conspiracy, the controversy? And what was their status? What was their standing in the Edah, in the congregation, in the aggregation? Well, how many? There was 250, as we say, 250 men, 250 princes of the people. They wasn't just regular, just men, but they were princes, Nasim. They were princes of Ha'am. They was men of renown. They was men of a name. So when their name dropped, the name called, people knew them by name. That's what it means, that they were men of renown. They were men of a name who were perhaps also, no doubt, all, if not the majority, firstborn sons. So we get the firstborn sons rebellion. They're taking away our rights. All right, no doubt is what they were saying. But here, question 11, what was the rebels' stated reason? You know, often a rebellion or revolution or controversy, there's always stated reasons, but then there's always the real reason. So there's a reason stated, and then there are the real reasons. So let's ask right here, what was the stated reason? What was the rebels' stated reason for challenging and confronting and going against Moshe and Aharon? Their stated reasons, well, they said, he said, she said, well, they said, them said that all the congregation is Isla. All of them are holy. Sounds like what I hear some Rastaman them sometimes saying, everyone is Isla, but you don't know the Isla instruction and directions. How can that be? I thought when we carry out his Isla will, this made us set apart, right? But their stated reasons was that they said that all the congregation was holy, and that Elohim, that God, that Yahweh, that Jehovah was among them, declaring the Emmanuel principle, Imanu, with us El, that El was amongst them, right? And therefore they rejected the idea that Moshe and Aaron, Aharon, were to be exalted above the people. Now, note this here. How similar is this to what Miriam, the sister of Aharon, and said to be the sister of Moshe, her earlier complaint, even where she couched it against the Ethiopian wife, right? She was bitching and moaning about the Ethiopian, almost like some of the ain't right Israelites, right? But here, question 12. what did Moshe say was Korah's real reason? What did Moses say was Korah, his real reason for rebelling? Well, Moshe, he said that Korah was attempting to seek the priesthood for himself. He was attempting to seek the priesthood for himself. And now when you read over it and you study it and you see what's said at first, and then what is said later on, you'll see that Korah, he used a kind of a roundabout argument. It was a roundabout argument, but it basically came down to exactly what Moshe pointed out. Moses pointed out that Korah, he was attempting to seek the priesthood for himself. Know what we're saying about love doesn't work any ill to his neighbor, and how Korah worked a lot of ill to his neighbors. Question 13, what was the test and the proof, we could say, to determine who were truly chosen to be Kohanim? What was the test or the proof test that was used to determine who were truly the chosen ones, right? The chosen to be Kohanim. Well, each of the 250 men, along with Aaron, they would take their censers, their fire pans, you could say their chalices, filled with burning incense, to offer at the Mishkan, to offer at the tabernacle. Ha'el, Hayel, the Almighty, would then give, quote, signs, otot. He would give signs as to who was right and who was ucking up, who was sinning, who was lacking in this matter. Question 14. What does this proof test here concerning the incense, the incense, right, the chalices is, what does it remind you of? Well, it reminds I of the death of Aharon, his two sons, Nadab and Abihu, who, according to the scripts, they offered strange fire, adulterous fire, strange fire, when the Mishkan, when the tabernacle, the sanctuary was first dedicated. It was first Hanukkah, the first livocation of the Mishkan in the wilderness. So the proof test here concerning the incense. Notice a lot is revolving around the incense. This is why to I Rastafari, brethren, right? Brothers and sisters are mainly to the brethren, to whom more is given, more is required. Take heed right here. All right. Already we should have been on the forefront, right, of sacramental use of cannabis and not riding the bandwagon of the recreationalist. But anyway, question 15. How did Datan and Abiram describe Mitzrayim? How do they describe the Egypta, Egypt, the Het Kapita? How did they describe Komet, Kemet, Smai, Tawi, Mitzrayim? How did they describe Egypt? Interesting. Datan and Abiram, they describe Egypt as a land flowing with milk and honey. You sure he wasn't talking about Tobia, Ethiopia? Is Egypt? I mean, the Kemet, the ground comes from Ethiopia. All that ground that they talk about, the black ground, the black land, that comes from Ethiopia. That comes from somewhere else, when the floods and everything like that. So how did Datan and Abiram describe Kemet, Mitzrayim as a land flowing with milk and honey? Question 16. What did Moshe predict? Moses makes a prediction, we could say even a prophecy, right? And they didn't have to wait a long amount of time to see it come to pass. But what did Moses predict for Korah, Datan, Abiram, their families, and all who followed, right, who were fooled into following them in this rebellion, in this abortive coup, this creeping coup here in the wilderness, the wilderness? Well, Moshe, he predicted, he said, well, basically, if they died a natural death, then they were right. But if they died by being swallowed up by the earth, then Moshe was right. Question 17. Were all the sons of Korah killed? were all the sons of Korah deaded on? No. His three sons. Who were the three sons of Korah? Often simply referred to as the B'nai Korah, Korah Lejoch. The three sons was Asir, Elkanah, and Abi Asaph. The three sons of Korah, right, that survived, that were not dead on, that did not follow in the foolish ways of their patriarch, of their father. Their names was Asir, Elkanah, and Abi Asaph. Apparently, they escaped their father's fate by exercising, Hebraically, what we know as teshuvah. Shub means to turn. Teshuvah is to have like a change of heart and mind. In other words, repentance, metanoia. They had a change of heart and mind. They were following their father, no doubt, initially, right? And then they did a 180. They did teshuvah. They thought differently. Indeed, we have 11, count them, 11 Psalms. We have 11 Psalms that are ascribed to the descendants of Korah, to the B'nai Korah, to the Korah Lejoch, to the children of Korah. They include Psalms 42, Psalms 44 to 49, Psalms 84 to 85, and Psalms 87 to Psalm 88. Again, the 11 Psalms of the sons of Korah, they include Psalm 42, Psalm 44 to Psalm 49, Psalm 84 to Psalm 85, and Psalm 87 to Psalm 88. And these are very, very important Psalms that really bring out the Hebrew mythos of the underworld. As in ancient Egypt, when people died, especially the royalty and nobility, they were expecting to go through the underworld, right, the Tuat, and go through a lot of different tests, right, on their way, opening of the mouth, speaking the words of power, going before the judge, and then being allowed, hopefully for them, right, to enter into the Seket Aru, the Seket Tepu, enter into the Elysian fields, enter into the promised land, after death's promised land. But here for the Israelites, we get something very much similar, but not below ground for the majority of the Israelites, with the exception of Korah and those who the ground, Datan, Abiram, swallowed up. But here with the sons of Korah and the songs of Korah. Did you know that even the great prophet Shemuel, Samuel, was Korah's descendant? Yes, the great prophet Samuel, Shemuel, was Korah's descendant. We have this in 1 Chronicles chapter 6, verses 22 to 28. 1 Chronicles chapter 6, verses 22 to 28 brings out the proof that even Samuel the prophet, this is what makes the Samuel reading right here for this Shabbat Korah, Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 11, focus verses 14 to 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 22, that even Samuel was one of Korah's descendants, no doubt through the surviving sons of Korah. Question 18. According to the Midrash, the study of HaTorah, what happened to On? The Ben Pelet, son of Pelet? Wasn't he one of the rebel leaders, at least in Numbers chapter 16, the first verse? What happened to him? Well, it is said according to the Midrash, the scholars, the ancient scholars of Torah, in studying the Torah, they came to the reasoning that it was his righteous wife. Remember, virtuous woman, Eshet Hayel, millions. Who can find Eshet, Oset, Eshet Hayel, a powerful, a strong woman, a righteous woman. His righteous wife convinced him to do teshuvah, to have a change of mind, to think differently, and to forsake the rebel lions, forsake the rebellion. And thus we find that, well, he survived. We find that he was not one of those who were destroyed in the rebellion. Question 19. What one word would you say describes the motive? What one word would you say describes the motive behind Korah's rebellion? The one word, jealousy. Or another word, pride. Kind of mixed up together, both of them. Jealousy, pride, right? Prideful jealousy. How about that? Kind of two words as one. Prideful jealousy. What one word, jealousy or pride? We would say prideful jealousy. Question 20. What happened? What happened to the 250 rebels after the earth swallowed the rebel leaders' camp? So first we had the rebel leaders' camps, right? Speaking about Korah, Datan, Abiram. The exception there is On, Ben Pelet. But what happened to the 250 that was, wanting to like play priests and offer Aishans and things? What happened to them? Well, according to the scripts, a fire was sent from Yahweh, from Jehovah, that consumed or ate up those who illegitimately, unconstitutionally, we can say, against the Torah, they offered Aishans, right? And they died. A fire was sent from Jehovah, the Ishe Yahweh. What's interesting is that with Datan and Abiram, it is said that when the fire finally had come out, right, it had come out in the form of a lion, right? The Aryeh mi Yehuda, the Lion of Judah. It came out, the fire, when it came from the sanctuary, it was said to have come out in the form of a lion. So this fire, right, ate up the 250 rebels after. So first thing that happened was that the rebel leaders' camps, Korah, Datan, Abiram, the earth opened up, swallowed them all up. And then the 250 rebels, the fire sent from Jehovah, burnt them up. Question 21. What happened? Interesting, in Hebrew we say Makorah. To say Makorah is like what happened. Like what happened. Korah, like what's going on, what happened. So even there, so Korah, it's a happening, right? What happened to Korah? What happened to the copper chalices, to the copper fire pans? What happened to the copper vessels that the rebels used to offer Aishans? What happened to their censers? Well, they were melted by the fire of Elohim. And Aaron's son, Eleazar, one of the priests, the rightful priest, one of the anointed, one of the messiahs, one of the Christians in the Hebrew camp, he was instructed to hammer them. Interesting, to hammer them. Remind me of the Jah word when he says, is not my word like fire? You know what I mean? And like a hammer that breaks the rocks in pieces. So first, the fire came from Jehovah, from the sanctuary, right? And it burned the men, right? And the fire had melted the censers. And then Aaron's son, Eleazar, he was instructed to hammer them, right? Hammer them into a cover, or it's called a grate, like a grating, right? A cover for the Mizbeach, for the golden, the brazen altar of sacrifice that was in the courtyard outside the tent. As a reminder, this will be a zikaron. It will be a reminder of the rebellion, as a reminder of the rebellion. Question 22. What did Jah people, Amo Yisrael, what did the people of Yasharallah, of Yisrael, what did they learn? Right? Let's ask the question. Did the people learn their lesson when they saw Korah, his fate? How long did it take them to turn against Moshe and Aharon? And what was their grievance? So did the people, Amo Yisrael, did Jah people learn their lesson by all this testing, right? Did they learn their lesson when Korah's fate was seen? And how long did it take them to turn against Moshe and Aharon? And what was their particular, the people, Jah people's grievance. Remember, these are the people that just, for the most part, were witnessing all of this, right? They wasn't directly involved, right, in it. But I'm sure in their feelings and their moods and their attitudes, well, let's answer the question. Did the people learn their lesson? Did the people learn their lesson? Nah, I don't think so. How long did it take them to turn against Moses and Aaron? The next day. Huh? The next day. The next day? The next day? Yeah, the next day. The people, Jah people, and they are Jah people, right? They are the Amo Yisrael, the people of Yisrael, Yasher Allah, if you please. They complained that Moshe had killed the people of Jehovah. Ain't this something? I would ask them, so who are you? Who are y'all? Because now the people, right, the rank and file Israelites, the people are complaining that Moshe, right, had killed the people of Jehovah. That was their grievance. Question 23. So, Makore, what happened to those who complained about the fate of the rebels? You know, it's one thing to complain about the fate of the rebels. All right. So what happened to them? Well, Jah had issued a plague. He issued a plague. I would actually say that he stopped holding back the plague because the people's complaining had actually brought the plague on themselves. Jah held it back, but now Jah let it go. He issued a plague that killed, according to the scripts, 14,700 of them. And I would dare say the majority of them mine. Majority of them were men, right? Based on the language of the scripture. So what happened to those who complained about the fate of the rebels, right? Well, the plague got them. Question 24, how did Moshe intervene? Oh man, ain't there something? Every time Moses is standing up and defending them, even those who want to kill him and those who are going against him. Here we go again. Moshe. Moshe intervened to save Ha'am, to save the people, to save Jah people from destruction. But how? Well, he instructed Aaron, Aharon. He instructed Aaron to take his censer, his Aishen's censer, his chalice, his fire pan, and to run, right? To run, not to walk, not to promenade, but to run among Ha'am, to run among Jah people, and to save them from the plague. So here's what's interesting in this whole narrative here about the Aishans. Note that the Torah calls this an atonement, that Moshe, through the Aishans, through the incense offering, had actually affected atonement. He affected atonement. Now we have the Day of Atonement, right? But here we have an interesting connection. And when we read the narrative, it's not Jehovah telling Moses to do this. It's Moses recognizing, do this and this will work. So we have the Aishans here acting as atonement.
Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, and the lifting up of my hands as the evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice, evening sacrifice. Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, for 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 thee. Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, before thee as incense.
Why, slash, perfect. Blessed, Mordaya.
And then also note how Moses, when you read the scripts, how he instructed him where to get the fire. You know, where to get the fire from off the altar. Don't do like these strange fire guys. Get it off of the altar and go in the midst of the people. Question 25. What was the final test to vindicate Jah's choice of Aharon, of Aaron as Kohen, even as Kohen Gadol, as the Kohen, the priest, Gadol, the big priest, as the high priest? Well, each of the tribal heads, the Roshim, the Rasses of Yisrael, they brought a staff with the name, the Shem of the Mateh, the tribe, engraved upon it. Moshe, he put the staffs, the rods, the staffs inside the tabernacle, the Mishkan, beside the Aron HaBrit, beside the Ark of the Covenant. And Hayel, he caused Aharon, Aaron's staff, to miraculously put forth buds and blossoms and to bear ripe almonds. Question 25. What did Hayel, the Almighty, tell Moshe to do with Aaron's staff? What did John tell Moses to do with Aaron's rod? To put it back in front of the ark and to keep it there as a reminder of his choice, of Jehovah's choice of Aharon as Kohen Gadol, as the big priest, as HaMashiach, as the anointed, as the Hebrew Christ in the camp. Question 27. After the rebellion was entirely quelled and squashed by Ha'el, what was the reaction of the surviving Bnei Yisrael, the surviving Israelites? Well, they were terrified. They were terrified. They were in a dread, right, of the tabernacle. They were terrified of the holy place. They were terrified of the Hebrew church. Right? You know the saying, they say, if you're scared, go to church. Not for these Israelites in the real church in the wilderness. They were terrified. They were too scared to go to the Hebrew church, to go to the tabernacle. And they were afraid that they were all about to die. No doubt because the mixed up moods and attitudes of the conspirators was no doubt in their hearts and minds. Question 28. How did Hayel, the Almighty, instruct as well as reassure, to shore up, always faithful, always sure? How did Jah instruct and reassure the survivors? Well, Jah reminded them that Aharon Ubanayo and his sons, Bani, they would bear the guilt. They would bear the guilt of the Mishkan. Anything goes wrong in the sanctuary, anything goes wrong with the offerings, well, it's not you, rank and file, Bnei Yisrael, Israelites, who are to be blamed. It will be Aharon and his sons. It will be Ha-Kohanim. It will be the priests. But the people, Amo Yisrael, were to support Ha-Kohanim, to support the priests, Aaron and his sons. How? Well, through contributions and donations and free will gifts and offerings given for their service. Quote, all the best of the oil and all the best of the wine and all the best of the grain, the first fruits of what they give shall be given to Ha-Kohanim, shall be given to the priests. The people, Jah people, the other tribes, the 12 tribes, they were also reminded to redeem. That means to purchase back, to buy back all the firstborn sons by giving 5 shekels to Ha-Kohanim, and to offer regular tithes, regular tenths tithes to Halloween. Once again, the people, Jah people, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, were also reminded to redeem all firstborn sons. How? By giving 5 shekels, right, to the priest. Shekel, the silver currency, and the shekel according to the weight of the sanctuary, and to also offer regular tithes, right? The regular tithes, the regular donations, right? A tenth, a tithe, right? Of their contributions, of their donations.
Thank you, whatever you have done. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions.
This discipleship radio broadcast has been made possible by donations from audience and listeners like you. Give thanks. Thank you very much, Miss Ghana.
Thank you, my
This discipleship radio broadcast has been made possible by donations from audience and listeners like you. Give thanks. Thank you very much, Miss Ghana.
thank you, whatever you have done. Thank you, whatever you have done. Thank you, whatever you have done. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions when I needed help. Make myself a man, no man is his own keeper. Slowly I close my eyes, Zion belongs to me. When I needed help, your contribution. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions. Thank you, whatever you have done. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions.
So here. Went through the 28 questions here for this Shabbat Korah. There's some topics of discussion, interesting topics of discussion. Only have time to kind of go through as many as we can here in the next 10 or so minutes before the fulfillment here for the first day service, Sunday service. Melkam, Ehud, Shabuah Tov. Yeah, good, strong Shabuah 7 right here. So for Shabbat Korah, come, make a reason. Reasonment 1 right here. Korah is mentioned in the book of Jude, the book of Judah, Yehuda, known as the book of Jude. He's mentioned Korah as a, quote, type of false teacher. Korah, called Kor, like Core in the KJV, but Korah, he pretended to be a, quote, man of the people. Right, Korah, he said, what a man of the people, right? He argued that all the congregation is holy. Thus the idea of a kingdom of priests and a holy people. His accusation that Moshe and Aharon, quote, exalted themselves or bigging up themselves above the people, was therefore very hypocritical, since we know that his real motivation was one of envy and also a lust, a craving desire for power. And indeed, he wanted to be the Kohen Gadol. He wanted to be the high priest of Yisrael, Yasharallah himself. Numbers chapter 16, verse 19. We say this to our fellow Hebrews and Israelites, especially those of us who do, acknowledge the Brit Hadasha, that there's only one high priest for I. Just a warning to those. Something like Korah thing here. But what characteristics do you see in Korah that might be present in other false teachers? What characteristics in Korah? Come, make a reason. Reasoning, second reasoning here for Shabbat Korah. Korah argued that since Aaron was honored as the firstborn son of Amram, who was himself the firstborn son of Kohath, he was next in line to be honored in the Mispaka, in the clan. Since he was the firstborn son of Amram's next oldest son, Itzhar. When Moshe sidestepped him In favor of El-Safan, Korah was offended and he was hurt, very hurt. Now let's discuss the Torah, direction instructions of what's known as the primo. What are the Torah direction instructions of the primogenitor, like the firstborn, the primogenitor? What is the direction instruction, the Torah on the primogenitor, or the primacy of the Bechor, like the Bechor in the Hebrew, the firstborn? Was Korah, was he right? Was he justified in his resentment? What criteria does Ha'el, the Almighty, use to choose leaders for Amo, for his people? Here, come. Make I and I reason. Thirdly, Ha'el, the Almighty, chosen priests, Kohanim, they were vindicated. They were justified and vindicated, made right and righteous in this Torah reading and feeding here, the 38th degree of our sabbatical study for Shabbat, Korah, and the contributions offered to them by Ha'am, by Jah people, are described as a covenant of salt. In Numbers chapter 18, verse 19, the contributions, the donations offered to them, to the Kohanim by Ha'am, are described as a covenant of salt in Numbers 18:19. Now, salt, milach, right? Milach. It was used, right? Offerings, right? As in the offerings as a preservative. Today, it is used to kasher. So when you kasher meat or debtors, kasher, to keep it kosher, you add salt to it. What connection do you see between the contributions given to Ha-Kohanim, to the priests, and to the preservation of Ha'am? So the giving of the people is called a covenant of salt. Salt is used to preserve the offerings and to kasher the offerings. So what connection do you see between the contributions given to Kohanim by the people and the preservation of Ha'am, Jah people, by the service of Ha-Kohanim, the priests? Come. Make I and I reason. Fourthly, as followers of Robbeinu, and I Rabbi, the Rabbi of Rabbis, our Black Lord and Savior Yeshua HaMashiach, as followers of Robbeinu, Yeshua, we are all regarded as, quote, priests and kings. Lifnei Yahuwah, before Jehovah. And yet still, there are still assigned roles. You know, we all are called priests and kings. There are still assigned roles within the community, the common unity of the Emunah, the Imnet, of the Haymanot, of the living faith. For example, Ha'el recalls, and he calls some to be pastors and teachers to equip the saints, the holy ones, the Hasidim, the Kedoshim, in Ephesians 4:11-12. And he imparts to others spiritual gifts to help build up, to edify, to exhort, to build up the body or the assembly of Ha-Mashiach, of the Messiah, of the anointed, of Christ, even Christ in his kingly character. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 27 to verse 30. Now, the goal or the aim of these roles and responsibilities, as well as the gifts and the callings, is to become more like Robbeinu, Adonenu, more like Yeshua HaNotri, like Yeshua HaMashiach, as I and I live within this world, as we live it and we walk it out. Come, make a reason. Fifthly, right here, how do you and I understand the idea of, quote, what is called rabbinical authority? Or how about churchical authority, pastoral authority, bishopal authority? That is the claim that the rabbis, like the priests and in the church today, that, well, the rabbis directly, they say they're direct descendants of Moshe, and